circulated the Latin translation, which I have in hand yesterday, and since you wanted some inkling of bibliography, I'm sorry I couldn't bring it because it was not ready. Another obstacle is, as I told you first, this book that I circulated is easily available in India, Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, but it has a big flow. Beautiful binding, yes, but a big flow. This is, you see, usually republisher, they do not mention the date. Here I wrote it by hand. The date is 1898. So whatever information you have in this book is, I would say, very scanty, and nowadays we have much better. So if you are interested at all, try to find something else. In any case, I don't know, do you see anything?
Yes, there is bibliography.
Yes, this is a, oh, this is a bit too much. Ab theek hai? So this is something I would very much recommend. It is easily available. I bought it in New Delhi, I think 3 years ago. It is G.A. Cudden, Dictionary of Literary Terms and Literary Theory. J.A. Cudden, Dictionary of Literary Terms and Literary Theory, revised by somebody who you know very well, M.A.R. Habib, Penguin Books. Penguin Books is not expensive. 2016 is the edition I have. I don't think there is a new one. And this is very handy. It's a quite thick book, it's a dictionary, and contrary to what you may think, of course it's about literature, but it is so vast a field. First of all, you see, we have still very vague ideas about literature. So it's, in this book you will find far beyond literary information, far beyond. So much for this. Now, लाल कहाँ गई है? एक लाल पेंसिल थी यहाँ जो जिसकी अभी इस्तेमाल हुए, ये वाली होगी,
वो भी उससे भी होगा
शायद। खैर,
देखिए वो हरा
मैं
इसका इस्तेमाल कीजिए, वो ठीक से मिटेगा
नहीं, ठीक है, ये
इसको मिटाने में
ओहो, और ये मिटा जाती, मीठी,
हाँ ठीक,
हाँ। So You know why I write both these letters in capital? Normally in Latin it is one letter. Translated by Robert Fagles. Robert Fagles, Fagles. Introduction by Bernard Knox. This is important to mention because his introduction is excellent. By B. Knox. Bernard Knox. This is Penguin Classics. As you might have noticed, and this was bought in India, so so many dates. 2008. 2008. To give you a precise idea of the quality of this work, it was printed 25 times. 25 times. So, well recommended. Now, a part of its multiple reprinting, why do I recommend this? I told you the introduction is excellent. It has a map, which I didn't show last time. I didn't have time. And it has many excellent notes. And for those who are interested in translation studies, because there is no comparative literary study or simply no good study of literature without translation. There is a translator's postscript, which is very interesting. And in addition to notes, we have something, this is very handy. We have a glossary of proper names with pronunciation. Because most of the proper names from Roman and Greek times came to English through French. So it makes a strange, a strange compromise between English, classical English, modern English, Latin and Old French. To this extent that sometimes I don't recognize the word when I hear it in English, the modern one, because I'm used to classical ones. So this good for, you see, this glossary is at least 50 pages. And it is a very useful thing, because this glossary, it avoids long notes, one thing, And second thing, it is, of course, a work of lexicology, that is explaining the words, but it has also historical notes. अभी मैं आपको दिखाऊंगा. आपको नजर नहीं आया वो? Can you see it? Yes? So I recommend this book because of its glossary, because the quality of translation is excellent. One thing he could not do is to have, I would say, a really versified translation. This is a huge work anyway. So much for bibliography for the moment. For the moment. Regarding Portuguese, most of my bibliography at home, my books most of them are in Portuguese, which I read since a long, long time. Maybe I have one. No, I don't have one. I'll find it. So tomorrow I'll give you a more precise thing. But this is such a basic word, such a basic work. Now, I said that I would ask you a few questions. Because you didn't ask me any question yesterday, apart of perhaps one person. So now comes my turn. Because I want to make sure that you have good notions. One second, please. No, it's not this one. Yes. Come on. It's coming. Yeah, it's coming. It takes time, you know. It takes time. Yes. Could we switch off the lights? Now, why do I bring this? Just to put something in your mind, you know. It's, by the way, this is a mosaic. So perhaps you know what a mosaic is? Before the art of painting, especially on the walls and on the floor, in Roman and Greek times, they would compose beautiful pictures with tiny pieces of ceramic that or stone painted and then cooked, you know, that are called tassels. This is a ceramic. It is in Tunisia. In Tunis, I went there for a conference, I think 10 years ago, perhaps. And I saw that in the program, nothing was said about the Museum of Tunis. Oh, by the way, museum. Do you know what a muse is? Musa? Muse? Huh? Yes. It is a feminine character in mythology that inspires the poet. There are many. But at least one thing, poetry is a universal vehicle for a long, long time. Be it philosophy, mathematics, theology, everything was in poetry because it was easy to remember. Now, well, the original size is like this, but slightly bigger. Yes. So here we have this man, you might have recognized. Who is he? Virgile. Yes. Now who is this? Huh? Clio. Yeah. Clio, the Musa of history. Yes, that is poet. No, drama. She is the one of drama. I forgot her name. Oh, doesn't matter. But you see here, she has a mask. Persona. Personal in English. In Latin, originally, sonum is sound. Sona is the plural of it. Neutral words, the neutral nouns, they make their plural in a. So sonum, sound, sona, sounds. Per, for. So the mask would represent the character. It was easier than making a different face, So you had a character. It could be a lady, young lady, old lady, young man, old man, a bad man, a good man. You had different masks that the actor would hold in front of his face, and he would declaim through the mouth. The mouth of the mask was wide open. So it was a way, it was a kind of loudspeaker. It would carry the sounds. So persona, like personal, like character, is derived from the technical mask. So the muse of tragedy and comedy is here. She is holding a mask. And Clio, the musa of history, she is holding a book. How do we know it is a book? It doesn't look like a book.
In ancient times they used to make
Roll it. It is volumen. Volumen means something, means a roll, like volume, So you had two sticks and you would open it like this. And, just like in cinema, you would roll it from one side and it opens from the other side. So she is holding a volumen. And here, I don't know if you can read. From here, I can hardly read. This is the Aeneidus, but it's not written in Latin. It's written in Greek, because Greek was prestigious. Do you remember the name of, yes? The name of his attire? Toga. Yes. Huh? It is one word, without seams, one piece. And you see, he is having a volumen. Now, who can tell me something about the father of the gods? Please raise your hand. No, raise your hand if you want to say something. No? So I missed my purpose? Yes? Zeus, yes. What else? He is the chief, yes. Yes. He is the gods of the gods. Hmm? Yes? Come in. Yes, the late fees are 500 rupees. So, where does he stand? Huh? Yes? Olympus, yes. What is Olympus? Yes, and another person? Are you afraid of me? Are you afraid of Olympus? So, do you remember what is Olympus? No? It is the abode of the gods. Technically speaking, geographically speaking, you may say something about it then? Yes. In Greece, there is a mountain, a big mountain that used to be Olympus. So it was supposed to be very much concrete. It was the highest mountain the Greek people around could see. So that was supposed to be the abode of the gods. Now, why do I talk about mythology before talking about Os Lusíadas by Camões? Any idea, young man?
We need the context.
Yes.
So that we understand
Yes.
what it is.
Yes. The could you add something? No? No? You, please? Could you add something? Why do we need to know all these old things to comment something that has been written 1,000 years later? Because you have an idea? Yes?
Sir, mythologies are based on the truth and it has universal themes which are still relevant.
Yes, that is a good idea. Now to complete it about Camões is that was his.
No, that he, in his epic, he refers to this mythology.
Yes.
And backward.
Yes. And you could say that he knew Virgile by heart, most probably. You see? That was his main model. And there has been some investigation about Camões. You see, he studied for nearly 4 years in a university in Lisbon. And he is famous for having quoted so many classical Greek and Latin writers. Yesterday I tried to make a list and then I stopped because I was reading again my copy of Lusíadas in Portuguese, which has many, many notes. And the notes are bigger than the text itself. So this is, now we are going to turn to him. Just I always switch it off because maneuvering is difficult otherwise.
You know about Olympus, moons, all that. Who is the 10th muse? We have discussed these things. The 10th muse. Muse. There are, how many muses are there?
For me, there were 7.
You know, there are 9, 10 is Sappho.
Yes.
I have discussed these things. That is why I studied text which I had not done.
Of course.
Where is Olympus even now?
One is his,
There are 2 Olympuses, she says, yes.
yeah,
One
there
is
is two Olympus. One is in Greek, the highest mountain, and another is Turkey, west part of south part of Turkey, Antalya city. And he known that more than 12 god of Greece.
Yes.
And they used to stay there. Right now, these areas are actually famous, and there is seaside.
You see, we-
Olympic antique city, and people are visiting.
Yes. We have trouble also with antique geography because names have changed a lot, and in the course of more than 15, 16,000 years, 1600 years, I'm referring to Camões now. And the names he uses are sometimes, they were clear in his generation, but now it is quite difficult. I would take one single example. Toprabana. Toprabana, he talks about Toprabana. Nowadays, nobody knows about it. That is Sri Lanka.
no Chinese numbers.
Yes.
They know Tamraparni.
Okay.
The word is Tamraparni.
Now, about Camões. First of all, I would just tell you a few words about Latin languages in general, what we call now Romance languages, and Portuguese in particular. I had said a few words day before yesterday, I think. How many Latin languages or Romance languages can you quote? Now, this is a very tricky question, even for me. One would say first, oh, of course, Italian. Okay. And second one, French, Spanish, it makes 3. Hey. Portuguese, 4. Romanian, from Romania, which is a part of Europe, that makes 5. And
Which is the other language in Spain? Spain have 2 languages.
yes,
She knows that's right. Which are the 2 languages in Spain?
I don't know, Catalan.
yes,
It's Catalan.
Catalan, You have Galician. Galician is very close to Portuguese. And Catalan is very close to the language I used to speak when I was at school, as a tiny boy, Occitan. Occitan. There is hardly any difference between southern French language and Catalan, to the extent of it that the older name of Catalan was Limoges, from a town in southern France, Limoges. Now we have 8, and there is also the French language in Switzerland, which is quite different, Romanche. That is a chartered language in Switzerland. Belgium, yes, they do have Flemish, but that is not a language. No, but it is French. That is not another one, you see? But, oh, by the way, Victor Hugo used to say, when he was asked, what is a language? You know his answer? A language is a dialect with an army. So, yes, language is always linked to some power. Otherwise, it cannot assert itself. So, now turning back to Portuguese, one thing we cannot deny to Camões, that he really settled the fate of Portuguese. In Camões' times, Portuguese and Spanish were very close to each other. And some of the phonetical marks we have in Spanish did not exist in Camões' times. Perhaps you have heard of the sound J in Spanish. In 17th century, it was unheard of, completely unheard of. Even in Latin America today, J is not pronounced in most of the time. In Spanish, we have a joke, because it doesn't exist in Portuguese either. It is sh. So in Spanish, we used to have a joke. That is, somebody is calling the Mexican embassy from Spain. Hello? Yeah, this is Embajada de Mexico. So the answer on the other hand is, no sir, Embajada of Mexico. So you see, in Mexican Spanish, it is the j pronunciation is not official. So the languages are constantly changing, and in the case of Portuguese, we can say that Portuguese was really settled and installed after Camões, one thing, and also after 70 years of Spanish domination. So that's why Camões is so famous in in Portugal, because he is thought to have saved the language. The day Camões dies, Portugal becomes a Spanish territory. Such a terrible coincidence. For 60 years. For 60 years. Even when Camões was a young man, he was heavily criticized for that. Because when he was in Goa, he used to write Spanish poetry. That was fashionable. And Spanish poetry in those days was considered ahead of Portuguese poetry. Hello. Yes, it's coming. So, this is a portrait, classical portrait. Can we have the lights off? Yes? Yes, thank you. This is a classical portrait. Well, this is an old edition of the Lusíadas in Paris. It is in Portuguese, which I have at home. And I like this because of the representation of Camões. You notice that his portrait as a soldier. He has a coat of arms, but he has no helmet. What has he here? Yes? Laurels, a crown of laurels, which is his crown of Prince of Poets, just like Virgile. And here he is not holding a spade, neither a shield. It's a book, but not like Virgile. It's a real book, that is hard-bound. And what do we see, what can we see about this? Let's see if I can. Oh. Yes. This is another picture that is perhaps clearer from an English translation of Camões. Here, of course, you cannot read, but here it's written Lusíadas, which does not appear here. Now, here you see his helmet. It is no coincidence because Camões, like Cervantes, was, before being a poet, he was a soldier. He was sent to war. And he lost one eye. You see, the artist does not show him straight-faced. No, it's a slight profile. So this eye is not shown. Here is neither. No, that is just age. Not like me, just age. I am interested in these, you see. This is a Renaissance design. Here you have an anchor, for the boat to anchorage, to dip the anchor and face the wind. Another anchor, and these statues are supposed to be kind of Hercules, and now they are holding what we call trophy. Trophy is the weapons you have taken from the enemy. Here you have, of course, a helmet, axes, a shield, and a bow. The bow represents Asia also, because Asian people, even very late, were excellent at, using a bow and arrows. Here you cannot perhaps see exactly, but here you have a lion's hide. Does it ring a bell? Hercules. He is compared to Hercules. Now you can perhaps put the lights on because people might have difficulties. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I did not have time to write a detailed bibliography on on Camões because I saw that my presentation was going to grow bigger and bigger. So tomorrow I will give you more details. Now I will just try to talk to you over my handbook. We said that, I said that Camões was, so to speak, the father of modern Portuguese. Portuguese as a literary language started earlier than any other language in Iberia. Iberia is, both Spain and Portuguese. And it was heavily influenced by French all throughout, which is not the case of Spanish. Of course, Portuguese, just like Spanish, had also many words of Arabic origin. Many. But in order to differentiate from Spanish, they would not choose the same Arabic words. You see? It's quite strange. For example, a tailor in English? A tailor. This is my tailor. My tailor's work. My tailor is rich. So, tejero in Spanish. Tejero. Teixeira in Portuguese, but that didn't work. In Portuguese, we have an Arabic word, alfaiate. Quite different. And in modern Portuguese, nobody says tejero. Everybody says alfaiate. So even using Arabic and Persian words, it is far different from Spanish. Otherwise, Portuguese and Spanish are very close, but they make different choices. The nose in Spanish is la nariz, feminine. In Portuguese, nariz, written exactly the same way, N-A-R-I-Z. Nariz in Spanish with th, that is common to Arabic, by the way. And nariz in Portuguese, Spanish doesn't have j. And in Portuguese, it is masculine, feminine, you see? So when you have somebody who thinks he can speak Portuguese and really his Portuguese is Spanish, so you can catch him for these little words. So both languages differentiate each other, and out of a common base you have a big divergence. Now, another cause of diverging was colonialism, early colonialism of Asia. Portuguese colonized Asia much before everybody else in Europe. I'm talking of medieval and Renaissance Europe, of course. So, in today's language, Portuguese has some words that may be very strange for a Spanish ear. Now, you know, a fan, a fan, the English word is related to Spanish word abanico, to make wind. Abanico in Spanish, everybody knows in Spanish. But if you are a Portuguese speaking person, you call it leke. Such a different thing. Leke comes from a Japanese word from Ryukyu Islands, where the Portuguese saw those things for first time. So you see, through colonialism, even early 16th century colonialism, languages do diverge. Now, to come to his biography, I will try to just give you simple facts. Just like Virgile, because the biographers of Camões were many, and just like Virgile, you know, since he was the most important writer for the identity of Portuguese people, so we don't have one biography, we have hundreds of biographies, and many things are pure legend. The number one legend is, just like Virgile, he was of humble origins. And thanks to his genius, you know, he became a great poet. Well, I would just contest this. Virgile was thought of being of humble origins if you refer to his father, perhaps. But through his mother, he was of aristocratic descent, Greek-speaking aristocratic descent. As far as Camões is concerned, now I need to show you perhaps a map of Spain. Yes. Is this clear enough? So, this part is called Galicia, Galiza in Portuguese. The word is linked to Gaul, my country. And Galicia is the birthplace of Portuguese language. Thank you. I used to have a pointer. There used to be one here. Okay, it doesn't matter. You know where it is? Yes, it is. Yes, it's here. Yes. Thank you. No, it was this one.
Okay.
See? Now, Galicia is as big as this, and it has a very, very important pilgrimage also. It was supposed to be not totally invaded by the so-called Arabs. By the way, there were no Arabs in Iberia, really, only the elite. Most of them, they were from this place and they were Berber. So trying to link Muslim Spain and Portugal to Arabia is quite a complicated thing, actually. So this part was supposed not to have been long occupied by the Arabs and the so-called Arabs. And you see, the Portuguese kingdom in 12th century started from here, and along the coast they built their independent kingdom much, much before than Castile, which is here. So there is a kind of geographical unity that is nowhere elsewhere. Because here you have mountains all the way almost, and here you have the sea, and this part they lost. Camões' family was originating from here, and his family was in exile in Lisbon. And hence the idea of them being poor. Actually, they were not poor at all. But one thing is certain, that Camões always had his idea of Portuguese language from there, a kind of universal idea of Portuguese language. And that is perhaps one reason, his ancestors' language, that is perhaps one of the reasons he refused to become a priest, because he thought he had to value his family heritage not by going to church, but by becoming a writer. He was born in 1524. He studied for around, from the age of 18 to 23, he studied in Coimbra. Now, what did I do? I never knew this would come in. So, doesn't, yes, it's coming back. Coimbra is somewhere here. Now, that was a new university founded by the Spanish king John III. I say new university because the university in Lisbon was totally in the hands of the church. And the church was pro-Spain. So the king thought it would be wiser to have the university out of the capital. And the University of Coimbra was a seat of knowledge and linked with France. So France was the direct opponent of Spain in those days also. So when he studies in Coimbra, that was a Renaissance-oriented university. And its program, so to speak, was renovating the readings of classical books even reading the Bible in Hebrew and Greek, which was something the church would forbid. We cannot prove that Camões had any knowledge of Greek. He had an excellent knowledge of Latin. We do not know whether he could read Greek, because it was becoming fashionable, against the church. You see, in the holy books in Latin, the church, in the margin, whenever there was a mention of Greek Bible, there was in the margin, are you following me? Hello? Are you following me? Are you following me? Yes? Because I see you reading on your, that is somehow disturbing me. So, you see, Portuguese people were deeply divided as regards Catholic religion, because the domination of the Catholic Church in Portugal was the arm of Spain. So they had a problem. So the church was sort of deprived of the university, translated to Coimbra, and then they could study Greek as well. Now, officially for the church, there was a saying in the holy books, whenever there was a sentence in Greek, they would not copy it. And they would write in the book, they would write, Graecum non legitur. Greek is not to be read. So we suspect that, we are not sure, we suspect that the knowledge of Camões was very much against the traditional knowledge of the church. And he had trouble the whole life with the church, because he was valuing his knowledge of Greek and perhaps Hebrew. Perhaps Hebrew. So he would not respect the traditional processions in Latin. We have an incident about his life when he was a young boy at the court in Lisbon. He was arrested because he refused to take his hat off during a Catholic procession. That was extremely disturbing, because he did not approve of the procession like the Protestant would do. They took him to jail for that. And it is not the only incident. So the way Camões inserts so many quotations from Greek and Latin literature in his in his Lusíadas, is a kind of protest, actually. To this extent that at the end of his book, he has 2 or 3 paras explaining that, yes, all right, I am sorry, I used all the way the figure of Zeus, Mars, Venus. I said that Luzu, the prototype of Portugal, the hero, Luzu. I said that he was the son of Mars and Venus, just like Hercules, you know. Well, he says, I'm sorry for that. We suspect that those verses were added at the end before getting the privilege of being printed. So he sort of apologizes for his constant use of Greco-Roman mythology. So much so that he had to write a paragraph on the unity of God. And then the religious authority says, yes, it can be printed. So, you see, there is no innocent way of using Greek and Roman mythology. All the way. You see, when he prints when he got the permission of printing his Lusíadas, that was in 1571. More than 60 years after the travels and voyage of Vasco da Gama. Now, the main hero of the Lusíadas is the Portuguese traveler and so-called Admiral Vasco da Gama. So he writes more than 60 years after. So he's feeling free about it. The church did not agree. Because what the church wanted is to consider the voyage, the seafaring of Vasco da Gama as the continuation of the reconquest. What the church would call reconquest was 400 years of battle to sort of liberate Iberia from the Moor domination. Oh, yes. You see, we have many years of wars, I think 300 years at least, before Spain and Portugal are totally liberated from so-called Arab domination. Even today, we have here 2 towns in Morocco that are theoretically and practically Spanish territory. Morocco never claimed it. You know why? Because that way Morocco says, oh yes, we are in Europe. So Portugal was created first, and modern Spain much later. So the church would insist on the ideology of so-called reconquest. And in the ideology of the church, do not forget that in those days, church was a territorial power. It was a kingdom also in Italy. It was an important political power. So the official theory of the church for so-called conquering Asia or Africa, etc., was to convert people to Christianity. That was the official pretext. Camões does not agree. He does not agree. He shows the travels of Vasco da Gama as they were first a voyage with commercial ambitions, colonial ambitions. For him, colonial ambitions were the real justification of conquering so many parts of Asia. And also, he says more or less openly that no, we didn't go there to convert people. So the church did not like it. He had to apologize about it. But he did not fully, because he had one ally. And now, you see, we have also this important aspect in epics, that epics are not separated from the governing power. Excuse me, I need to drink. So, now this is the travel, this is taken from Encyclopedia Britannica. I have much better documents at home, but I forgot to take them with me. Now, in 14, where is this thing? Ah, it's here. Yeah. You see, here you have the dates. The first voyage to India by Vasco da Gama. Vasco means Basque, from northern Spain. Da Gama, well, I did not look for it. I should, but I didn't. So, you see, 1497, 1499, that is roughly 70 years before the Lusíadas are printed. So one should not think of the Lusíadas as being an accurate description of the so-called discoveries. Lusíadas are about something else. And he had a big trouble because he said, oh no, this whole trip, this whole seafaring adventures has nothing to do with converting people to Christianity. And that is also one of the reasons for he took Virgile as a model. Because the Aeneid is the story of founding a nation. But also, in his mind, Homer model was there also. So, this is more or less compared to the Odyssey. Of course, he had, he went to jail for a moment because of that also. So, now the main purpose of the Lusíadas. One thing is striking. You see, the Lusíadas is only 10 books. Virgile, do you remember how many books? 12. Odyssey and especially Odyssey. 24. It goes on decreasing. It shows one thing, that it was becoming more and more difficult to write epics, for one simple reason, that the oral tradition of reciting poetry has been lost. So when you have the oral tradition of circulating long narrations, when this tradition is lost, what is left? You have to write it. And when you write it, well, life is not enough. Because we suppose that oral literature did not have one single author. It had several authors. We say Homer, but most probably Homer was not alone. We say Virgile, but most probably Virgile was not alone. Camões was alone. Now, his subject is not converting people to Christianity. No, not at all. His subject is Vasco da Gama first voyage and not the return. It's a kind of odyssey. And the return, you would say, well, he never had time to write about the return, because his own return from China and India was a very difficult thing. He was penniless. He returned in 1569, something like that. Was jailed also for a moment in China and in Africa by the Portuguese authority. And he says that I had trouble of taking my writings back to Portugal. He escaped from a ship that was sinking. Shipwreck. Thank you, sir. So in the legends, he's saying he's seen as, trying to survive, yes, with the book in one hand and surviving, yes, swimming with the other hand. This is a legend, of course. But it has some truth. It has some truth. And the thing is that yes. Yes. We have no sound. Oh. Well, not very important. But this thing is still working, and my voice is still clear, no? I wrote a good summary. Yes, it's here. You see, I'm only going to talk about 5 books of the Lusíadas, 5 out of 10. It's more or less 500 verses. I had an overview yesterday, a quick one, and thanks to the publishers, there was a tradition when translating classics and epics, people could not read the original language. Even in Portuguese today, people have problems in reading because the language has changed, of course, and because of so many references to classical mythology. So there is a tradition, or there was a tradition still, of having summaries at every book of every song in the epic poems. You have a summary in French, in English, in Portuguese, etc. So I went through those summaries again, and it's a good way of making a sort of audible presentation of the Lusíadas. Now, there is one first song, Canto Primeiro, first song. We have no light, right? We have light? Yes. Now, yes. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you very much. And these two pictures, this is not clear, I'm sorry for that, but this is more or less clear. You see, here Camões is seen stranded in Macau, in China. He was given, because the Portuguese authority did not like him, you see, he was punished. When he was in Goa, he made a beautiful preface for one of his friends who was a Jew and condemned by the Inquisition. So he was sent all the way to China, in Macau, with a strange official duty. He had to record the names of Portuguese people who had died in the wars. That was his official duty. A very boring one, you know, and useless one, but that was a way of taking him away from the court. It's 1965, I think, 1565, something like that. So he's in exile there. And this is a totally legendary picture, I would say. You see, he's sitting with a pen and the book, and here other papers he's writing. Here you can see his sword. The sword is useless. And the palm tree or the banana tree reminding us that we are far away from Portugal. And here a cave. He's supposed to have retired in a cave to write his poem, which is totally wrong after all. We suppose that even in Goa, he had so many books there. So his principal object is navigation of the Portuguese towards the Oriental seas. He does not say converting people. The gods of the Olympus hold a council. In the first book, the gods of the Olympus, they have a council, they have a meeting. So, what shall we do about this man? We are very far away from the official theory of reconquest. Yes? Yes? So, the gods are there on the Olympus. I'm talking of Lusíadas. They are discussing. And there is one god, the god of wine. And he's supposed to be the most oriental god, Bacchus. In Greek, Dionysus. He is the enemy of the Portuguese. Jupiter is neutral, more or less, but two gods are said to be in favor of the Portuguese seafarers, Mars on one side and Venus. Remember, they are supposed to be the ancestors of Julius Caesar, but also of Luso, the first ever Portuguese man. So they favor the Portuguese. The navigators, now we need the map again. Yes. You see, they go like that, and that is not mentioned in the first book. The first book starts here in Mozambique. The first safe anchorage they found after a tempest. And then a new narration starts. Just like in the Aeneid, after the storm, there is a narration. So they come at Mombasa, here in Mozambique, and they are staying there. But it is not a safe place. And the second book is telling us that the god Bacchus visits the king of Mombasa and tells him, "Oh, you should be very careful with these people. They are bad. You should oppose them. You should kill them." Just like in Virgile, when the king Priam has, at the end of the War of Troy, he has a vision. So Bacchus is trying to convince the king to finish the Portuguese. But the Portuguese receive a message by Mercury, the messenger of the gods. And Mercury says to Vasco da Gama, "Oh, this king, he's going to kill you. Go to another place." So Vasco da Gama goes away. You see, we have a very important point here, that the supreme gods, they interfere within the history and within the story of the epics. We are very much just like in Virgile, just like in Homer. And again, no word about the so-called reconquest. Now, why do I show you again the map of Spain? It is because, of course, the Lusíadas couldn't be left like that. We suppose that, especially when he came back to Portugal, Camões was forced to modify his writings. And then all of a sudden we have a song, like in the second book of the Aeneid, when Aeneas comes to Carthago and there he meets the queen. You remember her name? Huh? Dido. Yes. So here the listener is the king of Melinda. Melinda is in Kenya. So Vasco da Gama, on the advice of Mercury, the messenger of the gods, has gone to Kenya to escape the vengeance of the king of Mozambique. So he is there in Kenya, and he is friends with the king of Melinda. The modern version of Melinda is Malindi in Kenya. And there he founds a favorable year. And just like Aeneas telling his story to Dido, Vasco da Gama tells his story to the king of Melinda. But there is more to it, and probably Vasco da Gama had to modify his story, because what Vasco da Gama keeps on telling to the king of Melinda is first the history of Portugal, which has nothing to do actually with his own travels. Why that? Just because Vasco da Gama had to rectify his epics, because the church was saying, hey, what about the reconquest? What about the official aim of converting those people to Christianity? So he has a long, long book about the history of Portugal, that is the history of reconquest, the history of Christianity. So it's a compromise. And he narrates to the king of Melinda. So Vasco da Gama narrates the building of the Portuguese kingdom, defeating the Moors. Then the court and the church, they agree. Oh yes. Oh yes, this is justified. Oh yes. It goes for quite a long, you see, book 3rd, book 4 are totally devoted to the history of the reconquest of Iberia. And especially Vasco da Gama is insisting on battles against the Spaniards. Hey, we are not about reconquest here. Now, fighting against the Spaniards, the ideology of reconquest is again lost. But what is saved is the official ideology of Portugal becoming stronger than the Spanish kingdom. And again, to please the king, Camões modifies his epics. So officially, the epics subject, the epic poem subject is still the voyage of Vasco da Gama, all right. But Vasco da Gama has to tell, God knows why, yes, we know why, he has to tell the African king, he has to narrate the victories of the Portuguese people against the Spaniards. And then doing so, you see, including this in his epic poem, Camões not only wins the favor of the church, because more or less the church has to be Portuguese, but his main object is to please the Portuguese king and to sort of becoming nationalistic. Now, on one side, in the epics called the Lusíadas, on one side we have a recall or a summary of the war against the Moors. the ideology of the Crusades, the ideology of converting people to Christianity. Yes, he had to insert this for at least more than 200 verses about that. It has nothing to do with Vasco da Gama, but, to please the church. The official aim is to expand Christianity. On the other hand, he has to add another book on illustrating the great value, the great courage of the Portuguese people facing the Spaniards. Again, the aim of converting people to Christianity is lost. But he has an important aim, is telling to the king, oh yes, we are fighting for the independence of Portugal. Because when he publishes in 1571, 10 years after, Portugal is invaded by Spain again for 60 years. So he knew that was coming, and the king of Portugal was very much aware of it. So devoting more than 100 verses to battles of the Portuguese, to battles won by the Portuguese, not against the Moors, but against the Spaniards, that was a way of gaining the favor of the king and being allowed to publish again. Now, we know that while in Goa, in 1560, something like that, we know that Camões had a trouble with the Inquisition again. First, when he was young, in his 20s, coming back from Coimbra to the court to join his family, he had a trouble, remember, because in a Catholic procession, he refused to take off his hat, simply because he was against the fact of holding pictures of Christ, in public and having a public procession. He was against of it, couldn't say. So his way of protesting was just, he didn't take his hat off. So he had a big problem with the Inquisition. He might have been convinced by Protestant ideas. I'm quite sure of that. Like the people of the University of Coimbra. So a second trouble he had with the church was years later, in 1965, I think, when he wrote a preface for a book, O Colóquio das Simples. The dialogue of the, Urdu? Yeah? You know what is Mufurdat? Kitab al-Mufurdat. So, among the Arab people, Kitab al-Mufurdat. Huh? Sorry?
So you said Mufurdat, right? Or Mufurdat?
Mufurdat.
Mufurdat.
No, that is another thing.
Colloquium is dialogue.
Yes, because a part of epics, there was another way of writing philosophical works, like Erasmus did in Holland. You have two people talking to each other. That was the Greek model. Again, oral literature. So a colloquium is two people arguing with each other, and this time Garcia da Horta, he was a Jew sent by the Portuguese crown, because of his knowledge of Arabic, precisely, to record whatever new plants he could discover there. Remember, the real object of conquering so-called Asia was spices. So the spices trade was a key thing for the Portuguese crown. It would bring money, huge money. Pepper, for example. And Garcia da Horta's book, Garcia da Horta was it was not his real name. It was a nickname given by the church to the Jews. Da Horta means from the garden. Horticulture. Horta is O-R-T-A. So Garcia da Horta was officially there to record the plants. Of course, in his mind were Arabic books, because the Jews in those days, their official language was still Arabic. So he knew about so many books in Arabic written about Asia. And being in Asia himself, he describes the plants and writes a book with whatever references he has, and that became the Colloquium Simples, the book of the medicinal herbs. Simples, mufurd in Arabic, plural mufurdat, is a medicinal plant. So the colloquium, the discourse about the medicinal plant, spices, became a very important book. Years later, 10 years later, the church said, oh, but he is a Jew. The Inquisition was re-established in Goa very strongly. And this is a very sad story. You know what the church did in Goa? Garcia da Horta was dead. They took his body out of the tomb and they burnt the body. Not only the body, but also his sister, who was still alive. His sister, she was his secretary, actually. So, Camões was in trouble because he had written a beautiful preface for his friend Garcia da Horta. That took him to jail again. So it explains why in the epics, when he had to rewrite them, probably in Portugal also, he has, long passages of saying, all right, I have all the way I used the symbolism of Roman and Greek religion. But God is one only, and I adhere firmly to the church belief. He doesn't say like that, but you understand. So a part of his poems are just saying that, oh, it's only literature, I don't believe in those gods. It was a trick. Forgive me. And about his friend Garcia da Horta, he never apologized. Because the king was on his side. The king was very much embarrassed by the Inquisition. You see, what the Inquisition was a tribunal built by the church under, I'm sorry to say, French influence. And in Goa, especially, you see, the Inquisition was sent again and saying, oh, have you been really converting people? What about this Jew? What about those Hindus who are not real Christians? But the king in Portugal, as well as in Spain, they were embarrassed because the Inquisition was undermining the colonial work. You see, the colonial system needed local allies. Of course, some of them would be converted. Well, Do not worry about that. But the Inquisition, especially sent by Spain, was undermining the king's project. So he had to take care of that. And when he died, his ally, John III, was also dying, and the Emperor of Spain and Germany, Charles V and First of Spain, he, in the name of Spanish kingdom, he annexed the Portuguese kingdom. Just the day after the death of Camões. So you can say that the final redacting of the 10 books of the Lusíadas did transform the book. And also, not only Camões had to apologize for his using Greek and Roman mythology, not also did he had to apologize, well, he never really did, about his friend Garcia de Horta, that he escaped. Because he says, hey, this is our money. And even to the church, you criticize Garcia de Horta, but thanks to him, you've become filthily rich. So that was a kind of undertone. And we are quite sure that he had to reconstruct his book when he was in Portugal, and he died penniless because he was given a huge pension by the king, but that pension was taken away before he died because he was supposed not to be a good Catholic man, which, by the way, was probably true. And it took more than 100 years in Portugal to recognize Camões as a good writer. They did not even know when he was buried. So strong was the Inquisition, He was buried first anonymously. So we have mixed feelings in the beginning of 17th century, and it took quite a long time to the Portugal kingdom to recover from Spanish supremacy, one thing, and second thing, to recover from the Inquisition. The Inquisition was lasting in Portugal. It started in 14th, 15th century on a low tone, but it survived in Portugal up to Napoleon, 1812. Napoleon comes to Portugal and abolishes the Inquisition. Again, after Napoleon, it is revived for a short moment. So it has taken a long time to Portugal to really adopt Camões as a great writer. After the 1571-72 edition, we don't have good editions of Camões. It was more or less banned, and we have to wait for something like 1830 in France to have scholarly editions of Camões. So it becomes very, very tricky. So if I was to summarize my main points, can I write here? You see well? आ गई बिजली वो नहीं If they need it, we can have a session day after tomorrow just for them, if they need it. I would write a few important points. One is style and, well, you might not be familiar with my handwriting, so, and model. We are talking about the Lusíadas, the epics. So, the style is strophe, basic poetic units of 8 verses. I don't know if my English is correct. Strophe. This is a Greek word, by the way. Yes, just like in French. Yes. Eight. So, you have the basic unit is 1 strophe. In Greek, it means a para. Basic unit that has to be sung and remembered by heart, with 8 verses. Now, the verses, they have rhyme at the end, just like in Urdu, just like in French, which is unknown of English poetry, with rhymes. Rimas. Is this still working? Yes. Let me show you just Is this legible? Translation is mine, by the way. So, as armas e os barões assinalados que da ocidental praia lusitana, por mares nunca de antes navegados, passaram ainda além da Taprobana, em perigos e guerras esforçados, mais do que prometia a força humana, e entre gente remota edificaram novo reino que tanto sublimara. So, by the way, this is old Portuguese orthography. Here you would have a tilde. The arms on those faithful warriors who, from the occidental shores of Portugal by sea never before, navigated, went of Taprobana far away, among perils and wars in bravest way, more than human strength would allay, and among remote people a new realm established and so much embellished. Now, you see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is one strophe. To give you an idea of the length, the first song, Canto Primeiro, you have the first strophe here, is 106 strophes. I counted them last night. Multiplied by 8 verses. That makes 800 verses. The second book is 113 strophes multiplied by 8 verses. More or less the same, you know. The third book, Canto Terceiro, is 143 strophes by 8 verses. And the Canto Quarto, the fourth song, is 104 strophes multiplied by 8 verses. And the fifth one, and for today we will stop at the fifth one, only 100 strophes by 8 verses. So more or less the same length. And I said with rhyme. You see what we call alliteration and rich rhyme. What is a rich rhyme? It is you do not have only the end. You see, for example, and, but also the whole syllable, aram, aram, mana, ana, ana, adush, adush, ana, ana. So you have an alternance of rich rhymes and also quite regular rhythm. No, vu. You please count in your head. I'm incapable of doing that. So you count in your head and you will tell me the result. No, vu, rai, nu, que, tan, tu, su, bli, ma, ram. How many? 10. Decasyllabus. Decasyllabus. And it's all the way like this. Az, ar, mash, I, ush, ba, ron, esh, a, si, na, la, dush. Here we have a problem, no? Yeah.
Here, A is not when in reading.
Yes, it is blended. This one is blended.
Asharna,
Yeah, asinaladush. No, but this one also is blended.
this also gets
Yeah.
bar,
So
isha.
we have 10. We have actually 10. Now the poet, he cheats.
No, this is called scanning. How
Yeah.
do you scan a poem?
Yes, but it is cheating actually. It is cheating. It's allowed. We call it poetic license. Poetic license. So you see the now why do we have this short paragraph, this strophe at the end, at the very beginning? It is the exact copy of the first strophe of the Aeneid. You declare your intention, that is invocation. You declare your intention.
2 words are the same.
Yeah, no, and even the whole strophe is very much linked, very much linked. Tomorrow I shall give you a good literal comparison.
What is the first verse of
I will give it tomorrow.
Then go-
Yes, but well, I have it also here. But I would like to go to the second one. Now he is giving, you see, First thing, I'm going to talk about the voyage, the seafaring, Vasco da Gama. But then there is the excuse to the church, you see. This must have been added later. And also those kings of memory glorious who faith and empire went on expanding. You see, the Crusaders, the Crusade ideology, and Africa and Asia's devastating abundant lands, and not forgetting those who from death went liberating by their valiant deeds, lest art and ability fail me, everywhere I shall go singing. So now you have a second message to the church. Oh no, I did not forget about crusades. Oh no, I do not forget about converting people. Of course. So here you have the original purpose, the adventure of Vasco da Gama, and immediately after you have a kind of apology to the church. Oh no. Of course, converting people is very, very important. So, if I have, what time do I have now?
You have time. We'll take 15 minutes.
Yeah. So much for the model, the Latin model. I suspect he did not know Greek, but he had so many dictionaries of Greek and Latin at hand. And in those days, you know, since people could not read Greek, but Greek had become fashionable. We are talking of 1530, something like that. So, in Portugal, like in France, like in Italy, they had dictionaries of Greek mythology so that people might understand. And most of those works were written by Arab authors. They had come all the way through Constantinople, or they had been written by so supposedly converted Jews who knew very well Greek and Arabic. Remember, among the Arabic speaking people, knowing of Greek was common knowledge, while it was forbidden by the Latin Church. So he must have had at hand at least books about Homer and Iliad. That explains also many things. So sources were multiple sources, and you know, encyclopedias. Now it doesn't say that, but you cannot explain otherwise the wealth of references he has in the Lusíadas. More than 100 classical writers in Greek and Latin. He could possibly never read them, but he had what we call compendia. Compendia is the plural of compendium. He had compendia, summaries of classical Greek works at hand. Now, so Remus. This is a title of an important work of Camões, that is not much commented. Thank you. Not much commented, but it is very important to know. He had poems published. Those poems was published at a very later stage and even censored. Now the very word rimas was a kind of innovation, because the normal word would have been poesias, poetry. He says rimas. Rimas is derived from the Greek rhythm or rhythmos, which means rhythm. But Greek and Latin poetry did not know what we now call rhyme. It is a new, totally new idea that had come in 16th century through Sicily by Spanish writers. One famous one was Boscan, through the sonnet. So the sonnet, the new form, was having rhymes and alternate rhymes also. You see, gloriosas is with viciosas, dilatando with devastando, valerosas with gloriosas. So the decasyllable was new instead of the duodecasyllable. Instead of having 12 like the classical Greek meter of Alexandria, the Alexandrine rhymes was 12. He has 10, and he has rhymes, which is again a totally new thing. So rimas was, I don't remember the date of publication of his rimas, but most of it was published after his death. So there was another thing I wanted to say about him, if I can find. I did not have time to revise this. Hey, क्या हुआ? Can we have the lights off, please? Now, to illustrate again his classical model, this is a picture drawn in Paris in 1835, I do remember, and this was not allowed in Portugal. This shows the Council of the Gods deciding about the fate of Vasco da Gama. In the center is, who is this? Zeus, Jupiter. And here, who is this lady? Venus, with Cupid here. You see? Who is this? Athena. Yes. Who is this? Oh, sorry. No, this is Mars. I'm sorry. This is Mars. And who is this? This is, you see, his staff is here. This is Mercury, who is going to tell the Portuguese about the decisions of the gods. So, we have the Council of the Gods on the Mount Olymp, deciding of the fate. Now, this kind of picture would not be allowed in Portugal for a long, long time. It had to be done in Paris because the church did not like it. Because if you take this as the main illustration of the Lusíadas, you sort of say, oh, it is not about converting the whole world to Christianity. No, no, it's about something else. Now, still in Paris, 1835, I think, if I remember well. This is a picture of Vasco da Gama greeted by the king of Melinda. Now, there's something strange about this African king. What can you tell me? He's an Indian. He's an Indian, actually. You see, most probably in Melinda, Vasco da Gama met a Gujarati king. Gujarati. Perhaps not even a king. You see? And look at the boat. Look at the boat. I don't know if you can see, but this is not an African boat, not at all. And look at the chhatri. This is also very much Indian. And look at the musicians, especially this one. He is having a sitar. So, actually, this picture tells us that that Vasco da Gama here met an Indian king or Indian Shabandar. Shabandar, you understand? Governor of the port. Shabandar in Persian. So he must have met a Gujarati Shabandar. This is something that obviously in Portugal, even in those days, they would not like to hear about, because it is said in the Lusíadas, and that is true also, that he had a treaty with the non-Christian king. Probably a Muslim, but we don't know, or a Hindu. In those days, Gujarati settlers, they were practicing both. Anyway.
Where they meet, sir?
Huh?
Near Mozambique.
Melinda is now in Kenya. It is in Kenya. Melinda is Melinda. Milindi. Now it is Milindi. So, look at the lamp here. So, this picture is more or less a French reaction against the Portuguese negative attitude dictated by the still resisting Inquisition. So it tells you a lot about the lack of recognizing, the lack of, I would say, of good literary analysis of Portuguese literature up to very late. Because to negate the officially object of Vasco da Gama travel, that was embarrassing. The church, all the way to justify colonialism, had said, oh, we have the duty, after chasing out the Moors, the Muslims, we have the duty of carry on the crusaders, carry on the crusade, which was totally ridiculous. And even the Portuguese would not believe in it, of course. For them, it was the spices, money. And this is what the picture tells also. Because in his 5th book, in the Lusíadas, Camões does remind us that Vasco da Gama signed a peace treaty and a commercial treaty with this non-Christian king, or supposedly. Nowadays, of course, it does not pose any problem. But for a long, long time, we have testimonies that the so-called crusades ideology, or converting ideology, was present. And it was, in India itself, it was revived by Salazar. You see, because Salazar was a fascist dictatorship, and he wanted to retain, up to the last moment, every small part of the former Portugal colonial empire. I was in Lisbon when Goa fell, like they used to say, 1961. I think I was in Lisbon. And I heard, but in those days I didn't know about, couldn't understand well. I heard the last speech of Salazar about a queda de Goa, the loss, the fall of Goa, So, for a very, very long time, the rightist and fascist Portuguese government would not be at ease with the real colonial aims. So in order to retain the colonies, they would say, oh, this is our civilizer's duty. Such a ridiculous duty, I would say. So now the last point is ideology. So I would say commerce or spices, commerce versus crusades ideology. So Camões had to sort of, spice and commerce, it goes well with nationalistic ideology. And crusades ideology goes well with, I would say, other kind of nationalistic ideology. To say that Portugal was the champion of Christianity was exactly the same thing that France was saying also, that Spain was saying also. So actually that carries also a national problem, because you cannot say that you are still the champion of Christianity when there is Spain that is much stronger than you saying the same thing. So you have to show yourself as a Portuguese national hero, sort of. So you have these contradictions, deep contradictions, into the epics of Camões. He was sort of divided in between those things. And it explains why it was published so late and sort of rewritten when he was in Portugal. So he had to be aware of the Spanish threat. Now, there is a last point I would like to talk about. It is a small, it is called O Velho do Rastelo. Right here. No, it's only one sentence. O Velho do Rastelo. If I'm not wrong, this is in book no, it's all right. It's all. Oh yes. Oh. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes. Thank you, sir. Merci beaucoup. Obrigado. Now, this is also another funny thing, you know. When you have a language of your own, you try to have polite words that are different from next door. So the Portuguese, they elaborated different polite formulas. In Spanish, thank you is gracias, from Latin, gratias a Deo. I thank you. Gracias. In Portuguese, nothing to say. Obrigado. I am your obliged. And if you are a woman, you say obrigada if you're a woman. If you're a man, you say obrigado. Very different. Yes. So, o velho do rastelo. There is a part that is in book 3, starts in book 3 and book 4 also. When Vasco da Gama is narrating, just like Aeneas to Dido, narrating his misfortunes, Vasco da Gama tells him, "Oh yes, we departed from Lisbon, and then we had problems with tempests, with monsters, etc. We encountered terrible gods." So he writes about that. But then there is a passage that says when the boat, the fleet of Vasco da Gama, when it leaves Lisbon, you know, Lisbon has a big river, the Tagus, just like the Thames in London, that makes a safe anchorage. It's very wide. And there is a small island that later became a fort called Belém. Belém is Beit Lehem, the house of the bread. That is the native city of Christ. Belém. Belém is a contraction of Bethlehem. So in Belém there was a fort for the last protection of the fleet that was leaving Lisbon in the sea. And there, says Camões, was an old man, and then he addresses, on the top of his voice, he addresses Vasco da Gama and says, "You fool, what are you going to do? You are going to fight wars while we have the Spaniards at home? You are going so-called to reconquest Asia and Africa to Christianity. But what about home? Don't you know the dangers are here? So we have this old man. Restealu is a place near that fort, Belém. So this man did not exist. Of course, it is an invention of Camões. But it is a warning to the Portuguese. And that is written to please the king. Because the king, contrary to the church, was fearing the power of the Spaniards and the power of the Inquisition. And the king was trying to reinforce Portuguese defense against the Spaniards, while the church was saying, oh no, this is the sister country. Oh no, true religion is coming from them. And the king, John III, was protecting the Jews against the Spaniards. You see, the Jews were great scholars, used even by Spain, even by Catholic Spain, as translators of Arabic and Hebrew. Now, the Catholic Church had a problem because the Bible was, until very late, never written in Latin. And they wanted it in Latin. But it was forbidden to read Greek. The New Testament is best known in Greek. Now, who could read Greek in 16th century Iberia? Well, the Jews, because they knew Greek through Arabic translation. And they had been working also as notaries because they knew Latin and Arabic very well. And you should know that Greek, Hebrew and Arabic are very akin. So the Jews were needed for their medical knowledge, like Garcia da Horta, for their geographical knowledge, because the Jews knew how to read the Arab, so-called Arab travelers. They were Persian travelers also. They knew. And the church, the, what do you call it, the Inquisition. The Inquisition was, on the contrary, influenced by Spain and was saying, oh no, we should stop those Jews, we should expel them because they are not really converted. But the king would need them. There was a problem, you know, there's a big problem. And Value do Restelo is, this episode is about a man who says that your conquest, you know, we are 70 years after Vasco da Gama actually. Your conquest of the East are very fragile. And so is your kingdom at home. Look at the Hollandese, look at the Netherlands. In those days they would call them only Hollandese, you know. Look at the Spaniards, they are eating Brazil. So the real danger is not the pagans, the real danger is at home. So says the Value do Restelo. And he has a prophetic function. Now we come again to a very important point, prophecy. What is in you? Where? Value, oh, the old man.
The old man of Restelo.
Yeah, yeah. Restelo is a beach. And value is the old man. In Latin, vetulus, the little old. So, Oh, what was about to? I forgot.
Prophetic function.
Yeah. Vaticiniu. Prophetic. The prophecy. So the Velho do Restelo, he has a prophecy that really came true. He says that within a few years, we are going to lose all those gained territories the world over. And even at home, we are going to lose our independence. So this was supposed to be said by an old wise man when Vasco da Gama was setting sail to Asia. He says, "Stop, you fool. You are doing vain glory, while the real glory is at home, conquering independence against the Spaniards." So this is an important para. We do not know when it was redacted, but probably Camões rewrote that when he was again having trouble with the court. Because, oh yes, there is one sin of young Camões. Young Camões, when he was in his 20s, he was a beautiful young man and of supposedly noble ancestry. That also can be discussed. So he comes to the court, and in the court there is a princess, the Ataide. There is a princess who is having a poetic court, like of Margaret of Navarre in France. That princess, she was, what should I say? She was considering herself very modern, and she was having competitive recitation of poetry, mainly sonnets, the new poetry that was not liked by the church at all. So she had a poetical court. Sarang. But I think that the word would not exist in those days. Yeah, but it is sarang. You are right. I don't know after all. I don't know when was the word coined. But she was having a court. She was the king's daughter, and the young Camões had refused to become a priest. He had a very influential uncle who told him, "Oh yes, if you want, thanks to me, you can have a beautiful career within the church. You can become a canonicus." Canonicus, that is a theological, a master of theology. And that was to be an important political post. Young Camões says, "No thanks. No, I'm not interested. I'm going to poetry, to the court." You remember Virgile? He refused to become an orator and turns to poetry. And so did young Camões, and he was so bold as to address poetry to the king's daughter and to her first lady also, and officially fall in love with her. Now this was a big sin. You know why? Because his family did not have enough money to allow any idea of marriage. So at the age of 22, he was sent into exile. Again, already. So all these things, the court did not forget. When he comes back after so many years, when he comes back to the court in 1569-70, in order to get his Lusíadas published to gain again the court's favor, because the court, oh, they remember him. Oh, this is the young man who pretended to marry a princess while he had no money. What an insult. So he says, no, sorry, I'm no more that one, you know. And look at the Virgile du Restel who says in my poem, I am defending the independence of the Portuguese king. And that was certainly another key to inserting this long speech against colonialism. I mean, I call it colonialism, this is what it was. Against expanding the political power of Portugal overseas. So he says to the court, oh yes, I'm a true friend of the king, because I'm not advising to go again into difficult wars in Asia. No, I say the problem is here. Of course you knew me as an insolent young man. Forget about it. I am a devout admirer of the king. I am a patriot. So you have this long speech of the old man of the Restelo, that is telling Vasco da Gama, do not go there. This is vain enterprise. This will bring only bad thing. See, a kind of prophecy, but a very negative one. Very negative one. While we have other prophecies in the Lusíadas, positive ones, in book 3, if I remember, or is it? Yes. Huh? Yeah. You see, Vaticínio, we have another prophecy also. We have a sort of positive prophecy in book number 4. That is saying to Vasco da Gama, oh, you are going to have beautiful victories, you are going to expand the glory of the Portuguese king. And then all of a sudden, before book 4, in book 2, we have the Virgile du Restelo saying exact contrary, a prophecy of doom, a prophecy against Vasco da Gama. So, see, it is supposed that this passage was rewritten when Vasco da Gama was needing money and needing a pension from the king. So now we can summarize that the style and model is first the Aeneid and other Roman historians also. But that is linked with multiple sources and linked with the ideology of Crusades. Just saying that, of course, I use Roman Greco mythology, but oh no, I'm a good Christian. And he has a full 100 verses saying that, no, I don't believe in Bacchus. No, I don't believe in Jupiter. No, I do believe in unum Deum, one God, etc. You know? So, we have these points. And on the contrary, we have the nationalistic idea of Vasco da Gama being out not to fight new crusades, but to make an empire built on spices, trade of spices trade. And at the end, we have a reminder that, well, after all, all this glory, etc., that is dangerous. We better look at home, at what is happening. So we have classical inspiration, we have Christian inspiration, but moderated, because he would fear the Inquisition, and probably in between the lines we have a pleading for a more modest Christianity, leading to Protestantism, probably. And finally, we have a nationalistic ideology, but that is again tempered, moderated by realism, saying that, we should be careful with the Spaniards. We should save the kingdom instead of going so far away. So these are the points. Did I make myself clear? I'm sorry I was very confused today because I had a small problem. I forgot to bring other notes, I travel with an important, what do you call it, hard disk. And in this I thought I had good bibliography. I had saved my latest version of these, but it wasn't there. Thank you.
Any questions?
Well, I hope you have.
Where they are to be tracked? Where is it?
What is in you?
There are 8 verses.
Yeah?
No, sir, that number 1, 8 verses. I will just say something about that form. Because, sir, that form is exactly resembles to
Excuse me, I didn't. Which part?
Sir, that 8 verses.
8 verses.
8 verses, yes, read this.
Yes.
This is exactly like Ottovorima, right? That Italian poetry in that form.
Yes, of course. Of course it is. Of course it is. Because the model was Arabic. Anyway, the model was Arabic. You see, and when you compose poetry, you count. How many fingers do you have? 10. So, making 10 verses is something very, very much natural. You see. 10 syllables. Sorry, 10 syllables. So,
What says 10 syllables? Decasyllabic?
decasyllabic, yes. It is something quite universal, but for his time that was new. Especially the rhyming system was new. Still, in English poetry, rhyme does not really exist, while it is true of all Romance languages. Yeah?
So it's just a question that, because the name is the Lusíadas, but you are talking about Portuguese. What does this Portuguese word come from?
Portuguese.
Portuguese or Portugal? Because Lusitans or Lusíadas.
Yes, Lusitania is from Luzu,
Yes.
but actually we don't know. Lusus is there in the Aeneid, yes. But Portugal is, very strangely, we have a map of well, it doesn't matter. You remember the map? So in the north of Portugal, there is a port. Porto. And that was the main center of the development of Portugal. Portucalia in Latin. The port of the Gauls, Portucalia. So Gaul is like Gaul, Gallia in Latin, Portugalia. Very simple.
There is a river in Portugal, Douro. It comes from Spain. It is in Spain also.
All rivers come from Spain in Portugal, unfortunately for them.
It comes, and even now the place we have called Porto is there on that river.
Yeah.
So and there you have a settlement on Douro River of the Celtic people, Gauls.
Yeah.
So Porto
Sup- Yes. Supposedly, yes.
Porto that's the origin.
But
So Portugal gets the name from Porto, as you get the name of the wine also.
yes, of course. But if you look at the map again, it is the only safe harbor on that coast before going down. It is because in Galicia there was no safe harbor. It's too rocky. It's dangerous. While in Porto, you said you have the mouth of the Douro, Spanish Duero, the Douro, which is a very big mouth, and that is a safe anchorage. And of course, when they lost Galicia, the safe anchorage was there. And Oporto, the port. Port is in Latin portus, related to porta, the gate. And phoros in Greek, which means trading, carrying on. Yes?
You have mentioned the two contradictory points.
Yes.
These two contradictory points in this epic. Will you elaborate that?
Yes, there are two contradictory points. One point is he had to be nationalistic, but he had to be a good Catholic on the other side. The problem is the Catholic Church in Portugal was against the king. They were in favor of Spain. You see? So Camões, he had trouble with the Inquisition. So he had to behave as a good Catholic. Somehow. But on the other hand, if he wanted to please the king, he had to say, oh yes, but the important thing is not the Inquisition, not the church. The important thing is to keep Portugal independent. So being nationalistic, in a way, was contradictory with being a good Catholic that was too much Spanish-sided. Did I explain? Yes? Thank you very much. Thank you.